Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth-ship Horizon, his hands clasped tightly behind his back as he watched the stars spill across the main window like rivers of cold fire. It had been 3 long months since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, 3 months of cautious diplomacy, heavy suspicion, and endless unanswered questions. The Council had promised guidance, protection, and entry into a galaxy-spanning civilization. But to Morrison, their promises felt like chains made of velvet. The Horizon was not a warship. It was a science vessel, small and lean, built for exploration on the edge of human space. Its crew of 50 were scientists, doctors, and engineers, not soldiers. Yet Morrison, a former soldier himself, had learned that the edge of known space often blurred into dangerous ground. The Council had warned them of unsuitable species, outcasts, criminals, beings too unpredictable to live under the Council's order. But Morrison knew how propaganda worked. He had seen Earth governments twist the truth before, and something about the Council's ambassador, the tall, blue-skinned alien named Velter, made him uneasy. Velter had visited Earth once, his words dripping with superiority. "You are young, you need guidance, you must follow our rules." On the bridge, the quiet hum of instruments was broken by a sharp voice. "Captain, we're picking up a signal," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, the ship's communications officer. A young woman with short brown hair and eyes sharp as broken glass, she rarely spoke with urgency. But now her voice carried weight. Morrison turned. "Where from?" "The outer edge of the asteroid field, faint but repeating." She pressed a control and the ship's speakers hissed with static, then resolved into a broken, trembling voice. "Please, anyone, our ship dying, we need help." The bridge fell silent. The crew listened as the weak voice stuttered through the static, filled with exhaustion and fear. Morrison stepped closer. "Can you tell what kind of ship it is?" Amy shook her head. "Not human and not Council, at least not any design in our database. The signal is almost gone. Their power is failing." Commander Kelly Brooks swiveled in her chair at the helm. A veteran pilot with close-cropped hair and the kind of no-nonsense presence that kept crews alive, she met Morrison's eyes. "2 hours at full burn if we go." Morrison didn't hesitate. Set course. Some of the scientists on the bridge exchanged nervous looks. They all knew the Council's warnings, criminals, dangerous, not to be trusted. But Morrison remembered the sound of the voice. It hadn't been threatening. It had been desperate. He leaned closer to the main display as the stars shifted with the ship's new heading. Somewhere ahead, someone was dying. And whether human or alien, Morrison couldn't ignore that. 2 hours later, the horizon slipped into the shadow of the asteroid field. Rocks the size of cities drifted like black giants, their surfaces glowing faintly from reflected starlight. "There," Amy whispered, as if the field itself were listening. On the screen, a ship drifted among the rocks, or what was left of one. Its hull was torn in 3 directions, leaking atmosphere and frozen shards of gas. Strange designs clashed together. One section looked like living crystal, glowing faintly blue. Another rippled like molten metal frozen mid-flow. The third looked like a liquid-filled dome, cracked and leaking its strange contents into the void. "That's the strangest ship I've ever seen," murmured Dr. Lisa Hayes, the ship's xenobiologist, standing behind Morrison. Hayes was older, her gray hair tied back, her kind eyes wide with wonder. "It looks like 3 ships welded together." "Life signs?" Morrison asked. She studied her instruments. "Yes, faint, 3 different species, none human, none Council." Amy's console beeped. "Captain, incoming transmission, weak but direct." "Put it through." The speakers crackled. A new voice emerged, halting, words bent by an accent that sounded like static given shape. "Human ship, we see your approach. We are grateful. Our vessel fails. Many injured. We ask for help, though we know you may refuse." Morrison leaned toward the microphone. "Why would we refuse?" A long pause. Then, "Because we are the cast-out ones. The Council has marked us unfit for civilized space." The bridge went still. Dr. Hayes drew in a sharp breath. Amy whispered, "Outcasts." Morrison's jaw tightened. He had heard the Council's warnings. But now the supposed criminals were begging for help, half dead in a broken ship. He thought of Velter's cold words, "They are dangerous. They threaten galactic peace." Yet in the dying voice, Morrison heard only desperation. He pressed the microphone again. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth-ship Horizon. We're coming to help. Prepare for rescue operations." The alien's reply was almost disbelieving. You will help us." Morrison answered with steel in his voice. "Even if the Council abandons you, we don't abandon people in need. That's not who we are." The rescue lasted 6 hours. The Horizon's shuttles darted back and forth through the asteroid field, ferrying survivors from the crippled alien vessel, and each shuttle brought new astonishment. The first survivors were insect-like beings, their bodies crystalline, their 6 legs carrying them with a strange, delicate grace. Their shells glowed with soft light, cracked and bleeding strange energy. They called themselves the Cathani. 12 survived, many badly wounded. The second group were beings of living energy contained in fragile containment suits. They shifted colors as they spoke, their forms flowing like auroras trapped in glass. They called themselves the Morton. Only 8 remained alive. The third group resembled humans, but with gills on their necks and webbed hands. They breathed liquid instead of air, carried in heavy tanks. They named themselves the Zephyrians, and 15 clung to life. 3 peoples, 3 outcasts, all clinging to survival. Dr. Hayes and her medical team worked around the clock, learning how to mend crystal shells, recharge containment suits, and refill breathing tanks. She moved among the wounded with frantic determination, her gray hair falling loose as she improvised solutions no medical book had prepared her for. Meanwhile, Morrison spoke with the leaders. The Cathani leader, Zixara, spoke through a translator, her crystal shell dimming with weakness. "They said we think too much alike. They fear our unity." Fluxion, leader of the Morton, glowed bright as he added, "They fear we will steal their machines. We only want to help them work better." Corlesh, the Zephyrian elder, spoke with calm sorrow. "They demanded we fight their wars. We refused. They called us weak." Morrison listened, anger simmering. These beings weren't criminals. They were refugees punished for being different. Then Amy's console beeped again. "Captain, incoming message from Council Space." Morrison felt his stomach sink, put it through. The tall blue figure of Ambassador Velter filled the screen in the meeting room. His cold, sharp eyes glinted like ice. "Captain Morrison, our sensors detected your vessel near the boundary of human space. Did you encounter unauthorized ships?" Morrison kept his voice calm. "We responded to a distress call. Survivors needed help." "Describe these survivors," Velter demanded. 3 species. They claim you exiled them." Velter's expression hardened. "The rejected ones, dangerous criminals. You must surrender them immediately. Harboring them is a crime under galactic law." Morrison stared into Velter's cold eyes. He thought of Zixara's dimming shell, Fluxion's soft glow, Corlesh's sad wisdom. He thought of his crew working themselves half-dead to save strangers. "They don't look like criminals to me," Morrison said. "They look like refugees." Velter leaned closer, his voice colder than the void. "You do not understand. They are unfit for civilization. If you protect them, Earth itself may face the Council's judgment." The transmission cut. Silence filled the room. Morrison turned to the window, watching stars burn beyond the glass. Somewhere out there, the Council ruled through fear, casting entire peoples into darkness. And now Earth stood at a crossroads. He exhaled slowly. "Set course for Earth," he told his crew. "We're bringing them home." But as the Horizon shifted its heading, Amy's console beeped again. Her face paled. "Captain, new contact, multiple signals, ships incoming from Council space, fast." Morrison's blood ran cold. "How many?" Amy swallowed. "At least 20. The bridge of the Horizon was silent except for the steady hum of its engines and the sharp beeping of Amy Foster's console. Captain Jake Morrison leaned over her shoulder, eyes fixed on the glowing display. 20 bright dots appeared against the black void, advancing in formation. Council ships, bigger, faster, stronger than anything Earth had ever built. Commander Kelly Brooks swore under her breath. 20 ships, they'll be on us in less than 2 hours, Captain, and if they want to fight," she shook her head, "we don't stand a chance." Morrison stared at the display, his jaw tightening. The Horizon wasn't built for battle. Its thin hull and light weapons could barely fend off pirates, much less the Council's war machines. Dr. Hayes hurried onto the bridge, her medical uniform stained with alien fluids. "The refugees are stable for now, but they're weak. We can't move them again so soon. Captain, if those ships board us." "I know," Morrison said quietly. The refugees had been brought aboard only hours ago. The Cathani with their cracked shells glowing faintly with dim blue light, the Morton whose containment suits flickered with unstable energy, the Zephyrians, their tanks bubbling as they struggled to breathe. They had trusted the humans, trusted him, and now the Council was coming to drag them away. Amy's console chirped again. Captain, incoming transmission from the lead Council vessel. Morrison drew a deep breath, put it through. The main screen flickered, and a new figure appeared. Not Ambassador Velter this time, but a stern alien with gray skin, 4 thick arms, and eyes black as obsidian. He wore a gleaming uniform of silver and blue. "This is Admiral Krexnal of the Galactic Council Fleet," the alien rumbled. His deep voice seemed to vibrate through the hull itself. "Human vessel, you are harboring criminals. You will surrender them immediately." Morrison stood tall. "Admiral, these people aren't criminals. They're refugees. Injured, weak. They needed help." "They are dangerous," Krexnal snapped. "Their species were exiled for crimes against the galaxy. Protecting them makes you complicit. Surrender them now, and Earth will not be punished for your mistake." The word punished made Morrison's crew stiffen. Kelly clenched her fists at the helm. Amy's face drained of color. Morrison forced himself to remain calm. "With respect, Admiral, Earth is not yet a member of your council. Your laws don't apply to us." Krexnal's black eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand, Captain. The laws of civilization apply to all who seek to join it. If you refuse, you will find your world very isolated." The screen went dark. For a moment, only the hum of the engines remained. Then Kelly swiveled her chair to face Morrison. "Jake, what do we do? 20 warships out there all pointed at us. If they decide to fire." "They won't," Morrison said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "The Council doesn't want to destroy us, not yet. They want us afraid. They want us obedient." "And the refugees?" Hayes asked, her voice trembling with quiet anger. Morrison looked around the bridge. His crew's eyes were on him, waiting, hopping. Finally, he said, "We take them to Earth. Whatever happens, humanity won't abandon them." The Horizon fled through the asteroid field, its engines burning hot. The Council ships did not pursue immediately. Instead, they shadowed the humans from a distance, like wolves circling their prey. Every few hours, another transmission arrived. "Surrender them. You do not know what you are dealing with. Earth's survival depends on obedience." Each time, Morrison gave the same answer: "They're under our protection." The days bled together. Dr. Hayes worked without rest in the medical bay, learning to mend alien bodies with human tools. The Cathani hummed in soft, resonant tones as they worked together to heal their wounded. The Morton used their flickering energy to repair broken systems aboard the Horizon. And the Zephyrians sang low, bubbling songs that seemed to soothe even the most exhausted humans. Trust began to grow, fragile but real. One evening, Morrison found himself in the medical bay. Zixara, the Cathani leader, lay on a medical bed, her crystalline shell fractured. She hummed weakly as Dr. Hayes worked to seal the cracks. "You risk much for us, Captain," Zixara said through her translator. Her voice was like glass chimes breaking softly. "Why?" Morrison sat beside her. "Because it's the right thing to do." "Rightness," Zixara murmured. "The Council does not believe in such things. Only power, only control." Fluxion, the Morton leader, shifted colors nearby, his energy form glowing pale blue. "They fear what we represent. Cooperation without control, machines that serve freely, minds that share without secrecy, peace without armies. These are threats to their rule." Corlesh, the Zephyrian elder, floated in her liquid tank, her voice gentle. "And yet you risk your people's safety to protect us. You are unusual." Morrison almost smiled. Humans have been called worse. On the 5th day, Earth came into view. Blue oceans, green continents, and clouds swirling like white paint across a canvas. For Morrison, it had never looked so fragile. President Catherine Blake awaited them. A strong leader with sharp eyes and a calm voice, she had guided Earth through its first contact with the Council. When Morrison's transmission reached her, she listened carefully as he explained everything: the distress call, the refugees, the Council's demands. When he finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Blake spoke. "You did the right thing, Captain. Bring them down. We'll find a place for them." The relief on the bridge was palpable. Kelly exhaled hard. Amy slumped in her chair. Hayes smiled for the first time in days. But the relief didn't last long. Amy's console beeped. Captain incoming transmission from Council Space, priority level extreme. The screen filled once more with Admiral Krexnall's grim face. But this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Ambassador Velter, his blue skin glowing faintly, his eyes sharp and cold. "Captain Morrison," Velter said, his voice like ice breaking, "you have defied the will of the Council. This will not be tolerated." Blake appeared on the split screen, standing in Earth's command center. "Ambassador, these are refugees. They've done nothing wrong except exist." Velter's eyes narrowed. "They are criminals. The Cathani seek to enslave all minds. The Mortons steal technology. The Zephyrians weaken societies with pacifist lies. We exiled them for good reason." "That's a lie," Dr. Hayes snapped from the bridge. "I've lived with them for days. They're builders, healers, thinkers, not criminals." Velter's gaze turned to her, cold and sharp. "And how much can you learn in a few days, Doctor? The Council has known them for centuries." President Blake folded her arms. "Ambassador, Earth will not abandon them. Not to you, not to anyone." Velter's calm mask cracked, revealing a flash of anger. "Then you are making Earth an enemy of the galaxy." The transmission cut. Silence hung heavy on the bridge. Morrison could feel the weight of it pressing down. The Council's mask of patience was gone. They would not tolerate defiance much longer. Amy's console chirped again. "Captain, new sensor contacts, at the edge of the system." Morrison turned sharply. "How many?" Amy's voice trembled. 50 Council warships, they're here." The Council fleet hung at the edge of the solar system like a wall of black steel and fire. 50 warships, each larger than Earth's newest carriers, stood in cold formation. They did not advance, not yet, but their presence was a blade at humanity's throat. On Earth, however, life moved with a nervous determination. President Catherine Blake had made her decision clear. The refugees would stay, and so the work began. The Cathani were given a crystalline building on the outskirts of Geneva, designed by human engineers but swiftly remade by the aliens themselves. Using tools Morrison had never seen, the insect-like beings hummed together in soft resonance. Their glowing shells pulsed as they touched the building's walls, causing the very structure to bend and reshape. In hours, they turned cold steel into a living structure of light and glass, stronger and more flexible than anything humans had built before. The Mortons settled into a research facility near New York. Their containment suits glowed like lanterns as they floated from machine to machine, their colors shifting with emotion. One touched an old server unit that had been broken for years. Sparks flickered, and the machine roared back to life, humming smoother than it ever had. The Morton didn't just repair technology, they improved it. The Zephyrians were given a medical complex by the sea. Massive tanks of oxygen-rich liquid were built for them to breathe, connected by transparent tubes that curved like veins through the facility. Their healers worked alongside human doctors, demonstrating techniques no one on Earth had dreamed possible. A child with a damaged spine walked again after a single Zephyrian treatment of light and sound. A man with failing lungs breathed freely, his eyes filled with tears of wonder. The people of Earth watched, astonished. For every voice that whispered fear, "They're dangerous. They'll bring the Council's wrath." There were 10 who saw miracles, compassion, and hope. Captain Jake Morrison watched all this unfold with a strange mix of pride and dread. He had stood on the bridge of the horizon when they made the choice to help. Now he watched as humanity's compassion blossomed into something greater. But the shadow of the Council loomed closer every day. One evening, Morrison walked the crystalline halls of the Cathani structure. Zixara, their leader, moved beside him. Her 6 legs tapped against the glowing floor, her cracked shell now sealed with bands of crystal. "Your people adapt quickly," Zixara said through her translator. "Most species recoil from us. They call us hive minds, they fear losing themselves, but you're humans, they listen, they learn." Morrison glanced at her. "Maybe because we know what it feels like to be underestimated. For centuries, stronger nations called us primitive, unworthy. We proved them wrong. Now the Council does the same. Maybe helping you is our way of saying never again." Zixara's crystalline eyes glowed faintly. "Then perhaps your people are not as young as the Council claims." In New York, Fluxion, the Morton leader, stood in a chamber filled with humming machines. His glowing form pulsed with yellow light as he touched a cracked energy core. Instantly, the machine stabilized, its output doubling. Dr. Ben Carter, Earth's leading energy scientist, wiped sweat from his brow as he watched. "That's impossible. We've been trying to fix that core for a decade. Fluxions' form shifted to soft blue. Not impossible, machines want to work, we remind them. Carter laughed softly in disbelief. You remind them. Fluxions' form pulsed again. Do you remind your children to breathe when they cry, or do they remember on their own? Machines are not alive, but they dream of their purpose. We help them remember it. For the first time, Carter realized what humanity might gain from these beings. Not stolen secrets, as the Council claimed, not dangerous technology, but friendship with those who understood the heart of machines better than humans ever could. Meanwhile, at the Zephyrian complex, Corliss drifted in her massive tank, her webbed hands glowing faintly with bioluminescent light. She sang low notes, vibrating the water. Around her, human patients floated, their wounds closing faster than any surgeon's hand could manage. Dr. Lisa Hayes stood at the observation window, tears in her eyes. This could change everything. Cancer, chronic pain, disabilities, they can heal what we thought was permanent. Corliss's voice flowed through the speakers, soft as waves. Healing is not power, it is responsibility. We offered it to the Council. They wanted weapons instead. When we refused, they called us cowards. Hayes pressed her hand against the glass, meeting Corliss's eyes. They were wrong. Corliss tilted her head. Perhaps, but wrong voices often shout the loudest. While hope bloomed on Earth, fear festered above it. From the bridge of the Council flagship, Admiral Krexnall watched Earth's broadcasts. He saw humans and refugees working side by side. He saw children laughing as Cathani shells glowed with music. He saw scientists cheering as Morton brought dead machines to life. He saw doctors weeping as Zephyrians healed the incurable. And he felt unease. When Ambassador Velter entered, Krexnall turned to him. They do not look like criminals, he said slowly. Velter's blue skin darkened. Do not be deceived, Admiral. Their talents are dangerous precisely because they inspire hope. Hope breeds rebellion. Rebellion destroys order. The Council exists to prevent chaos. Krexnall's black eyes lingered on the screen. And yet, are we preventing chaos or creating it? Velter's cold gaze hardened. You are a soldier, not a philosopher. Prepare the fleet. Earth will surrender or Earth will burn. On Earth, President Blake called an emergency meeting. Morrison, Dr. Hayes, Dr. Carter, and the refugee leaders sat around a long table in Geneva. Outside the windows, the crystalline towers of the Cathani building glowed softly against the night. The Council fleet has been here for 3 days, Blake said, her voice steady but grim. They've made no move yet, but their patience won't last. We need to decide how far we're willing to go to protect our new friends. Call us what we are, Zixara said softly. Refugees cast out, but no longer alone. Blake nodded. Refugees, allies, the Council claims you're criminals. I need to know the truth. Why were you exiled? The room grew quiet. Fluxions' glow dimmed, Corliss's eyes lowered. Finally, Zixara spoke. We share thoughts, not control, not enslavement, voluntary. Together, we solve problems faster than alone. The Council feared our unity would make others obsolete. Fluxion added, his form flickering red. We repair machines too well. Why buy Council technology when we can make old machines better? Their merchants lost profit. They spread fear. Corliss's voice bubbled through the translator. We refused to fight their wars. We offered healers instead of soldiers. They called us weak, cowards, unfit for their order. Blake's hands clenched on the table. So you weren't exiled for crimes. You were exiled for refusing to be tools. The refugees said nothing. Their silence was answer enough. Before anyone could speak again, an alarm blared. A security officer rushed into the room. Madam President, Captain, we have incoming transmission from the Council fleet. The wall screen lit up. Admiral Krexnall's face appeared, his dark eyes grim. Earth leaders, you have defied the Council. This is your final warning. Surrender the refugees within 48 hours, or we will come for them. The screen cut. Silence filled the room, heavy as lead. Then Kelly Brooks' voice came over Morrison's comm. Captain, you'd better get back to the horizon. Our sensors just picked something up. You're going to want to see this. Morrison's stomach sank. What is it? Her reply chilled the room. More ships, not Council, not human. Dozens of them. They just dropped out of FTL near the edge of the system. The Horizon's bridge pulsed with red warning lights as Captain Jake Morrison rushed in. Commander Kelly Brooks pointed at the main display. Her voice was sharp, controlled, but Morrison saw the tension in her jaw. Contacts, Captain, dropped in just outside the Council blockade. Not human, not Council. At least 30 vessels so far, all broadcasting strange signatures. On the screen, new dots appeared, scattering across the void like a second constellation. Each ship was different. Some gleamed like coral grown into starships. Others shimmered like vessels made of living light. One looked less like a ship and more like a giant shell, its surface glowing with pulses like a heartbeat. Morrison's pulse quickened. Any transmissions? Amy Foster worked furiously at her console. Yes, dozens, trying to break through the jamming field the Council put up. She twisted a dial. The speakers hissed with static, then cleared to reveal a strange, halting voice. Human ship, we see your defiance. We too are cast out. We come to stand with you. The bridge froze. Another refugee group, Hayes whispered. Amy's console lit with more signals. Captain, I'm getting messages from across the fleet. Different languages, different code structures, but the intent's the same. They're all saying the same thing. We are exiles too. We want to help. Within hours, the trickle became a flood. From the horizon, Morrison watched as dozens of ships gathered near Earth's orbit, hanging in cautious formation beyond the reach of the Council fleet. Their designs were wildly different, some crude, some impossibly advanced. Some ships bore scars of old battles, patched with metal and desperation. Others looked abandoned, cobbled together by hands that had nothing left but hope. In Geneva, President Blake called another emergency council. Morrison joined via HoloLink, his figure shimmering beside the refugee leaders. What are we looking at? Blake demanded, her face pale but steady. Dr. Hayes answered first. It seems the Morton transmitted our story. Their link with machines let them broadcast far wider than we imagined. Now, the whole galaxy knows what happened here. Fluxion's form pulsed faintly. We told them the truth, that humans defended us when no one else would. On the screen, one of the new ships opened a channel. A strange alien appeared, purple-skinned, six-eyed, with tentacle arms curling nervously. Her voice was halting, broken but earnest. We are the Vexari people. Long ago, Council demanded we abandon our gods. We refused. They cast us out. When we heard your story, we came. May we stand with you. Behind her, dozens of other faces crowded, each one different, insectoid, reptilian, gaseous, crystalline, organic. All watching, waiting, daring to hope. Blake's throat tightened. How many species are we talking about? Amy's voice came through Morrison's calm feed. At least 15 so far, Madam President. More signals are still inbound. Blake's eyes closed for a moment. When she opened them again, they burned with resolve. Then Earth is no longer just defending 3 refugee peoples. We may be defending half the galaxy. The Council reacted swiftly. Admiral Krexnall appeared again on every broadcast channel, his dark face grim, his voice iron. To all ships in this system, disperse immediately. Any attempt to shelter the criminal species will be considered an act of war. Earth has already chosen its fate. Do not share it. But his words fell flat. Across the void, more ships arrived. Each carried a story. The Lindari, who had been exiled for refusing to pay crushing taxes that bankrupted their worlds. The Velari, who had built communication systems too efficient for the Council's control. The Quentari, engineers whose inventions threatened Council profits. Others who were nameless to humans, but carried centuries of scars. Morrison stood at the horizon's window and watched as the ships formed into a ragged fleet. Their hulls bore the marks of survival, not conquest. These weren't warriors. They were peoples abandoned. And now they were looking to Earth, to humans, for leadership. That night in the crystalline halls of the Cathani structure, Morrison met with the refugee leaders. The air glowed faintly with Cathani resonance, a hum that seemed to settle into his bones. Zixara stood tall, her repaired shell shining faintly. The Council never expected this. For centuries, they silenced us. But now, because of you, the silence is broken. Fluxion pulsed bright orange. But with it comes danger. They will not allow this to grow. Corlesh floated in her tank, her gills fluttering. If we stay divided, they will destroy us one by one. We must unite. Morrison rubbed his temples. Unite? We've barely spoken the same language for a week. How can we build an alliance out of scraps and refugees? Zixara's crystalline eyes fixed on him. Because you already began it. You, human, when you chose to help us, you lit a fire the Council cannot extinguish. Morrison felt the weight of her words. He was no politician, no diplomat, just a soldier who refused to walk away from a distress call. Yet somehow that choice had drawn the gaze of half the galaxy. 2 days later, the first real test came. A human patrol ship on the edge of the system sent a frantic message. Council strike craft inbound, 6 fast interceptors. They're targeting the refugee ships. The horizon leapt into action, engines blazing as Morrison ordered pursuit. But before the humans could intercept, something astonishing happened. The ragged fleet of refugee ships lit up with coordinated signals. A shimmering barrier spread across their ranks, a massive energy shield, glowing pale green. Amy gasped. "Captain, that's Lindari tech. They just deployed a shield strong enough to cover the entire fleet." The Council interceptors fired, their beams slamming into the barrier. The shield rippled but held. Then in response, several Quentari vessels unleashed pulses of white energy. The beams struck the Council craft, not destroying them but disabling their systems. Engines went dark, weapons flickered out. The interceptors spun helplessly. Kelly Brooks whistled. "Non-lethal disabling weapons. Clever, they don't want to kill, they just want to survive." On the comms, cheers erupted in a dozen languages. For the first time, the outcasts had stood together and won. In Geneva, President Blake watched the reports with clenched fists. "We can't stop this anymore. This isn't just about Earth. It's about everyone the Council has crushed. We need to make it official." She turned to Morrison, Hayes, Carter, and the refugee leaders. "It's time to form something new, an alliance, a place where no species is cast out for profit or fear. But if we do this, the Council will declare war." Morrison stared out the window at the stars. The Council's fleet loomed like thunderclouds. The refugee ships flickered like sparks of hope. Finally, he said, "Then let's give them something worth fearing. Let's show them what happens when the cast outstand together." The declaration came the next morning. From Freedom Station, a hastily converted orbital dock above Earth, rebuilt by humans and Cathani engineers in mere weeks, President Blake addressed the galaxy. Her words were broadcast across every channel, every ship, every world that could receive them. "People of the galaxy, for too long the Council has ruled through fear. They cast out entire species not for crimes, but for refusing to be tools of war and profit. Today that ends. Earth and all who will join us declare the formation of the Free Worlds Alliance, an alliance built not on fear but on trust, not on conquest but on cooperation. Here, no one will be cast out for being different. Here, compassion will not be punished but celebrated. We know the Council will call us criminals, they will call us dangerous. But let the galaxy see who we truly are. Builders, healers, dreamers, survivors. Together, we are stronger than fear." Across the system, the refugee fleet lit up in response, Cathani shells glowing, Morton forms pulsing like auroras, Zephyrians singing in resonance. Humanity had lit the match. The galaxy was catching fire. But the Council was already moving. On the Council flagship, Admiral Krexnal stood grimly before his crew. He had argued for patience. He had warned against open war. But now, with the Free Worlds Alliance declared, the Council's rulers had made their decision. Ambassador Velter's voice was cold as a blade. "Admiral, you have your orders. Destroy the Alliance. Crush Earth. Make the galaxy remember what happens when chaos is allowed to grow." Krexnal hesitated. His forearms tightened into fists. Then he gave the command. "All ships advance." On the horizon's bridge, Amy's console shrieked with alarms. She turned, her face pale. "Captain, the Council fleet is moving. All 50 warships straight for Earth." Morrison's chest tightened. Around him, his crew looked to him, eyes wide with fear. He forced himself to stand tall. "Then we stand with our allies. We don't run, not this time." The refugee leaders' faces filled the screen, Zixara glowing bright. Fluxion blazing with color, Korlesh calm but firm. Zixara's voice chimed. "The Council believes strength is numbers. Let us show them what true strength looks like." The bridge shook as alarms blared louder. The Council fleet closed in, engines burning like fire across the stars. And then Amy gasped, her voice breaking the tension. "Captain, I'm picking up more ships. Hundreds, not Council, not us. They're answering the Alliance's call." The void above Earth turned into a storm of light. From every corner of the galaxy, ships dropped out of FTL. Some were battered, limping, their hulls scarred by decades of flight. Others gleamed with strange geometries humanity had never imagined, vessels of glass and fire, coral and living stone, liquid and light. Amy Foster's hands flew over her console as new contacts swarmed the display. "Captain, I'm reading 200 ships. No, 300, and more still coming." Kelly Brooks let out a low whistle. "That's not a fleet, that's half a galaxy showing up at once." On the screen, the comms board exploded with signals. Different tongues, different codes, but one message was clear. "We heard your call. We too were cast out. We stand with the Free Worlds Alliance." Morrison's chest tightened as he watched the ragged fleet gather. Every ship told a story of survival. Every voice carried pain, defiance, and hope. Dr. Hayes stood at his side, her face pale but eyes burning. "Jake, do you realize what you've done? What we've all done? You turned a single rescue into this." Morrison shook his head. "No, they did this themselves. All we did was prove someone would listen." On Freedom Station, President Catherine Blake stared at the growing armada through the observation window. Refugee leaders stood beside her, Zixara glowing bright, Fluxion pulsing with energy, Korlesh singing softly in her tank. Blake turned slowly. "We have strength now, numbers, but numbers alone won't stop the Council. We need to fight smart." Zixara's crystalline shell hummed. "We will think together, share thoughts with humans. Your creativity with our unity may find paths unseen." Fluxion shifted to a warm yellow. "We will repair what breaks. No system shall stay down long." Korlesh raised her webbed hand, her voice calm. "And we will heal what bleeds. But this battle must mean more than survival. It must show the galaxy another way." Blake nodded grimly. "Then we fight not just to win, but to prove the Council wrong." The Council fleet advanced, 50 massive warships in perfect formation. Admiral Krexnall stood at the heart of the flagship, his black eyes locked on the enemy. "Admiral," one officer said, "the Alliance fleet is far larger than expected, hundreds of vessels." Krexnall's jaw tightened. "Then we strike harder. The Council cannot afford to show weakness." But deep inside, he felt a tremor of doubt. These weren't warriors. These were the abandoned. Why would so many risk certain death unless the Council itself had failed them? Still, orders were orders. His voice thundered across the bridge. "All ships prepare to engage." The first salvos shook the system. Council warships unleashed torrents of plasma fire. Great beams of energy carved through space, slamming into the Alliance fleet. Dozens of smaller ships exploded instantly, torn apart by sheer force. But the Alliance was ready. A shimmering green barrier spread wide, the Lindari shield net spanning hundreds of vessels. Beams struck it and rippled across like stones on water. The shield held. Quentari ships fired in return, unleashing disabling pulses. Council guns flickered, darkened, fell silent. Whole frigates drifted powerless. Human destroyers, small but swift, darted among the chaos, launching torpedoes at the Council's flanks. Morton flowed across the battle, their energy forms slipping through systems, coaxing broken ships back to life mid-combat. The Zephyrians worked from Freedom Station, guiding medical shuttles into the fray. Injured crews were pulled from wrecks and carried back to healing tanks. Wounded who would have been left behind returned hours later, alive and ready again. It wasn't just a battle, it was proof. On the Horizon's bridge, Morrison gripped the railing as the ship shuddered from nearby impacts. "Aft shields down to 30%, Kelly shouted. "Morton team moving to stabilize power grid," Amy called back. Morrison's eyes locked on the Council formation. Their ships were larger, stronger, but their movements were rigid, predictable. The Alliance was chaotic, dozens of species flying together for the first time, but in that chaos was adaptability, flexibility, humanity's gift. "Kelly," he barked, "swing us wide on their flank, hit their engines when the Quentari fire. Amy, relay to the Lindari, stagger their shield pulses. Don't match them to the Council fire, offset them by seconds, make the Council overshoot." Orders raced through comms, and slowly, impossibly, the tide shifted. Council beams began missing their marks, wasted against empty space. Alliance pulses slipped through gaps, disabling cruiser after cruiser. For every Alliance ship destroyed, 2 Council ships went dark. The bridge shook again, sparks rained from the ceiling, but Amy's voice cut through, breathless. "Captain, it's working." Admiral Krexnall watched in growing horror. His fleet was superior in firepower, yet it was unraveling. The Alliance wasn't just fighting, they were learning, adapting in real time. "Admiral," one officer shouted, "Council casualties rising, a third of our fleet disabled." Krexnall's fists clenched. How are they doing this?" Then, through the static of the battle, a new voice crackled into his comms. A voice not Council, not Alliance. "Admiral Krexnall," it said, "this is Captain Velquin of the 12th Council Squadron. We can no longer follow these orders. We are defecting." The screen lit up with new signals. 15 Council warships broke formation, swinging around to join the Alliance line. Krexnall's crew erupted in shouts of alarm. "Admiral, our own ships." But he silenced them with a raised hand. His heart pounded. His soldiers, his people, were choosing to stand with the very beings the Council had called criminals. For the first time in 60 years of service, Krexnall wondered if the Council itself was the true enemy. On Freedom Station, President Blake's council chamber roared with reports. Defections, victory after victory. Losses, yes, but hope spreading like wildfire. Dr. Carter slammed his hand on the table, grinning. "This is it. This is the turning point." But Corlish's voice was soft, warning. "Not yet. The Council will not yield so easily." As if to prove her right, Amy's voice cut through the comms on every channel. "Captain, Madam President, new contact, Council flagship weapons powering up. They're targeting Freedom Station itself." On the Horizon's bridge, Morrison's blood ran cold. He saw it on the display, the Council flagship's massive cannons charging, energy surging like a storm. Kelly's voice was tight. "They're going to blow the station apart, thousands on board. If they fire, it's over." Morrison's mind raced. They couldn't disable that ship fast enough, couldn't shield the station from that much power, unless... "Fluxion," he snapped, opening comms. "Can the Morton reach that weapon system? Can you shut it down?" Fluxion's glowing form appeared on the screen. "It is vast, complex, dangerous. We might vanish inside." Morrison clenched his jaw. "If you don't, everyone here dies." For a long moment, the Morton leader pulsed softly. Then he flared bright white. "Then we go. Better to vanish for friends than live as outcasts." Morton energy forms swarmed from their ships, flowing through space like living auroras. They struck the Council flagship in a cascade of color, vanishing into its systems. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The cannons continued to charge, glowing hotter, brighter. Freedom Station shook with alarms. Then suddenly the light dimmed. The cannons sputtered, groaned, and went dead. Cheers erupted across the Alliance fleet. Morrison gripped the railing, his heart hammering. They'd done it. The Morton had stopped the weapon. But Amy's voice faltered, trembling. "Captain, I'm not reading any of the Morton's signatures anymore. They're gone." The cheers faded into silence. On Freedom Station, Fluxion's people glowed faintly in their suits, their lights dimmed with grief. Hayes covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wet. The Morton had saved them, but at what cost? In the quiet that followed, Morrison stared at the stars. The Council flagship was wounded, half its fleet in disarray, defections spreading. The Alliance had proven itself, but the sacrifice of the Morton burned in his chest. Kelly's voice was low. "Jake, this isn't over. They'll come back with more." Morrison nodded slowly. "Then we'd better be ready, because this war has only just begun." The battlefield lay in uneasy silence. Wreckage drifted through orbit, shards of metal and crystal spinning slowly against the backdrop of stars. Disabled Council cruisers smoldered, their engines cold. Refugee ships limped in formation, scarred but alive. And the Council flagship, still vast, still dangerous, hung quiet, its great cannon dead. On the Horizon's bridge, Captain Jake Morrison leaned against the rail, his knuckles white. Around him, the crew worked in hushed tones. No one dared cheer too loudly, not after what had been lost. Amy Foster stared at her console, her voice subdued. "No Morton signatures detected. It's like they just dissolved." Dr. Lisa Hayes stood rigid, her eyes glistening. "They gave everything to shut down that weapon, every last one of them." Silence fell again, heavier than any explosion. Even Commander Kelly Brooks, usually quick with grim humor, said nothing. She just stared at the drifting flagship, jaw clenched. Finally, Morrison spoke. His voice was hoarse but steady. They didn't vanish. They chose. They became part of something greater to save us all, and if we forget that, then their sacrifice was wasted. At Freedom Station, mourning spread like wildfire. The Morton who remained, those who had not joined Fluxion's final act, gathered in their energy suits, glowing faintly in colors of grief. They did not wail or shout. They stood silently, their lights dimmed, a quiet aurora of sorrow. President Catherine Blake stood before them. Her voice shook, but her words carried across the station. The council called you criminals. They said you would steal, that you could not be trusted. Today, you proved them liars. You gave more than anyone should ever have to give, and because of you, the Alliance lives. Her speech was broadcast across the galaxy, and in system after system, beings who had doubted began to believe, not because of power, not because of victory, but because of sacrifice. That night, Morrison found himself in the Zephyrian medical wing. Corlesh floated in her tank, her eyes glowing faintly in the water. "You carry the loss heavily," she said, her voice soft through the translator. Morrison nodded. "They trusted me, trusted us, and now they're gone." Corlesh's webbed hands pressed against the glass. "Not gone, changed. You humans cling to permanence, but life is movement. The Morton flowed into the machine, into the battle, into us. We carry them now whether we wish to or not." Morrison managed a tired smile. "You sound like Hayes," she said. "Grief means you loved enough to lose." Corlesh tilted her head. "Wise words, hold them close. The council will strike again, and when they do, you will need strength more than sorrow." She was right. Only days later, Alliance scouts brought dire news. Amy's report was grim. "Captain, long-range sensors confirm it. The council is massing reinforcements. Hundreds of ships this time, their full armada." Kelly swore under her breath. 50 nearly killed us. 100 more will be ashes." Morrison stared at the display. "How long until they arrive?" 2 weeks, Amy said softly. 2 weeks, 2 weeks before the council unleashed its fury. In Geneva, leaders of dozens of refugee species gathered around a circular table with President Blake. The chamber glowed with Cathani crystal light, hummed with Zephyrian songs of calm. The air was thick with fear and determination. "We cannot withstand their full fleet," Zixara said, her crystalline shell resonating. "Not with numbers alone." A Lindari representative, her skin like living bronze, shook her head. "Our shields cannot stretch that far. They will overwhelm us." The Velari delegate, a feline form with tentacles coiled at her sides, growled low. "We've run from them long enough. If we die, let it be with teeth bared." President Blake lifted her hands for silence. "No, we don't throw lives away. We win smarter. We win differently. That's what sets us apart from the council." Her gaze shifted to Morrison, who stood quietly at the edge of the chamber. "Captain, you've been in the thick of it. What do you think?" Morrison hesitated. All eyes turned to him. Humans, Cathani, Zephyrians, Vexari, Lindari, and more. Finally, he spoke. "The council fights like a machine, perfect formation, perfect discipline, but that's also their weakness. They can't adapt, they can't bend, we can. Humans improvise, the Cathani think together, the Zephyrians heal, each of us has strengths. Alone we fall, together we make something new." Zixara hummed softly, "A chorus, not a command." Corlesh nodded from her tank, "A harmony, not an army." President Blake's eyes burned with fire. "Then that's our answer, not to fight like them, but to fight like us." In the days that followed, Freedom Station became a forge. Human engineers worked side by side with Cathani, reshaping steel with crystal resonance. Zephyrians infused healing wards into ships, so even wounded crews could return to battle within hours. Velari communications wove an unbreakable network, linking every ship seamlessly. For the first time in galactic history, dozens of species worked not as rivals, not as tools, but as partners. Morrison walked the docks, watching it unfold. He saw a human pilot teaching a Vexari how to fly a fighter, a Zephyrian healer guiding a Cathani through the treatment of a human burn, a Lindari and a Quentari arguing loudly, then laughing together as they solved a power problem neither could fix alone. It wasn't just preparation for war. It was proof of something the Council had never allowed, true cooperation. But the Council did not sit idle. From the heart of their territory, propaganda spread. Velter himself appeared in broadcasts, his cold voice echoing across countless worlds. The so-called alliance is chaos given form. These cast-out ones are criminals, deceivers, cowards, and now the humans, ignorant children, make themselves their leaders. Do not be fooled. Their so-called compassion is weakness. Their unity is a lie. The Council alone guards order. The Council alone prevents the galaxy from devouring itself. Some worlds believed him, some did not, but every word revealed the Council's fear. For the first time in centuries, their control was slipping. 2 weeks passed quickly, too quickly. On the final night before the expected arrival, Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon. The stars were quiet, deceptively peaceful. His crew worked around him, faces set with grim determination. Amy looked up from her console. "Fleet's ready, Captain. 347 ships reporting operational, shields integrated, weapons synced." Kelly checked her readouts. "Still won't be enough to stop what's coming, but hell, I like our odds better than last time." Dr. Hayes entered, tired but smiling faintly. "Hospitals ready. Healing stations linked across the fleet. If they break us, we'll still put them back together." Morrison looked at them all, his crew, his family, and felt something stir inside him. Fear, yes, but also pride. They were ready. Then the alarm screamed. Amy's voice cracked. "Captain, they're here." The screen lit up with hundreds of signatures. The Council Armada had arrived. Wave after wave of colossal warships blotting out the stars. Their guns glowed like a sunrise of death. At their head was Admiral Krexnall's flagship, and beside him, another vessel, darker, larger, bristling with weapons Morrison had never seen. Amy's voice was faint. "Captain, that's not just a warship. It's a super dreadnought, twice the size of Freedom Station, built for one thing, annihilation." Kelly swore, gripping the helm. "They mean to end us in one strike." On the screen, Admiral Krexnall appeared, his forearms crossed, his black eyes grim. "Humans, refugees, outcasts, this is your last chance. Surrender now and perhaps the Council will show mercy. Resist and you will be erased." Morrison stared into the Admiral's eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Morrison leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "We're not afraid of you anymore." The transmission cut. The Armada surged forward. The Council Armada advanced like a tidal wave. Hundreds of warships, their engines blazing white, filled the black with walls of steel and fire. At their center loomed the super dreadnought, a leviathan of metal and fury, bristling with weapons large enough to shatter moons. On the horizon's bridge, Captain Jake Morrison gripped the railing, his eyes locked on the sight. Around him, his crew waited, the tension so thick it was like another presence in the room. Amy Foster's hands trembled over her console. "All Alliance ships reporting ready, Captain. They know what's coming." Kelly Brooks cracked her knuckles, jaw tight. "Just give the word, Jake." Dr. Hayes whispered softly, almost to herself. "Please, let this be enough." Morrison swallowed hard. Fear churned in his chest, but beneath it was something stronger. Resolve. "Signal Freedom Station," he said. "Tell President Blake we stand ready." From the heart of the Alliance fleet, President Catherine Blake's face appeared on every screen. The crystalline glow of Cathani's structures framed her as she spoke. "Friends, allies, survivors, the Council comes to destroy us because we dared to stand together. They call us criminals, weaklings, outcasts, but today we show them the truth. We are builders, we are healers, we are free. Fight with courage, fight with hope, and no matter what happens, remember this, the galaxy will know we did not bow." Across the fleet, cheers erupted in a dozen languages, in chimes and growls, in light pulses and songs. The Free World's Alliance had been born. The battle began. The Council opened fire first. Beams of white-hot plasma lanced across space, striking the Alliance shield net. The Lindari barrier flared, rippling under the assault. Ships exploded in fireballs. The void shook with violence. "Shields holding at 60%, Amy shouted. "Rotate the net," Morrison ordered. "Shift weaker sectors behind the Cathani reinforcements." The refugee fleet moved like no Council commander would have believed possible. Cathani linked minds with human tacticians, weaving maneuvers that confused the Council's rigid formations. Velari communications relayed orders seamlessly, no signal lost. Quentari weapons fired in waves, disabling Council cruisers without destroying them. Zephyrian medics worked furiously on shuttles darting through fire, pulling wounded from wrecks. The Alliance was battered, bloodied, but it did not break. Then the super dreadnought fired. A single beam ripped through the void, brighter than a sunrise. It struck the Lindari shield and shattered it. The blast tore through the Alliance lines, annihilating 6 ships in an instant. On the horizon's bridge, alarms screamed. Amy shouted, "Shields down, the net can't withstand another shot." Kelly slammed a fist on the helm. "One more like that and we're dust." Morrison's mind raced. They couldn't outgun that monster, but maybe they could outthink it. "Get me Zixara," he barked. The Cathani leader's crystalline face appeared on the screen, her shell glowing with fierce light. "Zixara," Morrison said, "can your people link with us? Share thoughts just for a moment." Her eyes shimmered. "Dangerous, minds may blur, but if you trust us." "I trust you," Morrison said without hesitation. The Cathani hummed in resonance. A wave of thought swept across the fleet. For an instant, Morrison felt it, the sharp minds of humans, the crystalline unity of Cathani, the flowing calm of Zephyrians, the fierce determination of Velari, the clever spark of Quentari. Ideas surged like fire, maneuvers no single species could imagine formed in seconds, a plan born of unity. "Kelly," Morrison said, his voice steadier now, "take us in close, right under their guns." She stared at him. "Jake, that's suicide." "Not if we time it right." The horizon dove forward, weaving through the chaos. Council ships fired, but the Alliance fleet shifted in perfect harmony, covering its advance. Disabling pulses cleared a path. Zephyrian healers sang over comms, calming wounded crews enough to keep fighting. The super dreadnought loomed closer, its massive cannons charging again. Amy's voice was frantic. "Captain, their main weapon is at 90% if it fires." "It won't," Morrison said. "Not if we remind it what it's supposed to be." He opened a channel to Fluxion's people, the surviving Morton, their light dim but unbroken. "You saw what your kin did. You know their sacrifice. I need you to finish what they started. Get inside that ship, talk to its machines, make them remember." The Morton leader glowed faintly. "It may kill us." Morrison's voice cracked with emotion. "I know, but if you don't, billions will die." The Morton pulsed bright white. "Then let it be so, for freedom." Morton forms streaked across space, diving into the dreadnought's hull. The ship shuddered as systems flickered, fighting against them. Energy sputtered. Lights dimmed. "Come on," Morrison muttered. "Come on." The dreadnought's cannon reached full charge. The weapon glowed like a second sun, ready to fire. And then it went dark. The colossal ship groaned, its engines sputtering. One by one, its guns fell silent. The dreadnought shuddered and then detonated in a controlled implosion, collapsing in on itself. The Morton were gone, all of them, but they had taken the Council's greatest weapon with them. The Council fleet faltered. With their flagship destroyed and defections spreading, their discipline fractured. Dozens of ships broke off, fleeing. Others lowered shields, signaling surrender. On the horizon's bridge, Amy's voice trembled with awe. "Captain, they're retreating. We won." The bridge erupted in cheers. Kelly slammed a fist into the air. Hayes wept openly, clutching Morrison's arm. Morrison himself stood frozen, staring at the wreckage of the dreadnought. They had won, but the cost. "Fluxion," he whispered softly, "you saved us all." 3 months later, Freedom Station had grown into something new, a shining city of crystal, steel, and light. Representatives from 50 species walked its halls. Refugees had become citizens. Survivors had become allies. In the Grand Assembly Chamber, President Blake stood before a sea of delegates. Beside her were Zixara, Corlesh, and Morrison. "Today," she declared, "we mark the birth of the Free World's Alliance, not through conquest, not through fear, but through choice. Together we ended the Council's tyranny. Together we proved compassion is stronger than fear." The Council will not forget this. They may strike again. But now they know we are not alone, we are not weak, and we will never abandon each other again. The hall erupted in thunderous sound, hums, songs, lights, cheers. Morrison looked around and felt something stir deep inside him. Humanity, once the youngest voice in the galaxy, now stood at the heart of something greater, not because they were strongest, not because they were cleverest, but because they had chosen compassion when no one else would. Later, Morrison stood at a window overlooking the stars. Dr. Hayes joined him, smiling softly. "You realize what this means, Jake?" she asked. That the galaxy, never going to be the same, he said quietly. She nodded. The Council's grip is broken. Others will follow. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, compassion will win. Morrison stared out at the endless stars. He thought of Fluxion, of the Morton, of every being who had given everything for this chance. He whispered almost to himself, "We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're building a future." Behind him, the hum of the Alliance echoed, voices, lights, songs, and laughter. The Free World's Alliance had been born, and no force in the universe could stand against it.